So those who are visiting as guests, these are public meetings, therefore that's why they're recorded in that. And I'm Brian, who got the short straw, or whatever we want to call it, and am chairing this committee again for my second term, which is why I'm joking about that. And being that we have a few guests, we can go around and do a quick introductions. And before that, I want to check to see, is there any public comment that was received in writing or emails or other forms that would need to be shared at this point? Hearing nothing from Rick and other staff, I'm going to assume there's none. So as I said, my name is Brian Gronke. I go by he, him, and with Resolve, which covers Southern Oregon, one of the CDRCs, and chair this group, which got started out of a legislative piece. And I'm going to turn it to Tara, the co-chair, to introduce herself.
Oh, there we go. Hi, Tara Cleland with East County Resolutions. Anything else, Brian, that you wanted us to say?
No, I think that's the main one. I just noticed we got a couple folks from Common Ground. So
Sure. And she, her pronouns.
Nancy?
Hi, I'm Nancy Engelhardt. I'm a manufactured homeowner in Gresham and represent manufactured homeowners.
And have been a longstanding organizer and back person for OSTA,
Yeah,
and that which is the tenants manufactured communities side in that. And Carla, you want to introduce yourself?
So I'm Carla Jacobson, and I work for Oregon Housing Community Services in the Manufactured Home Communities and Marinas program.
Great. And John?
Sorry to be late.
That's all right. We're just doing introductions, being that we have.
Trouble getting on. John Van Lanningham. I'm a lawyer with the Oregon Law Center.
Great. And Rick?
Rick Abrego, Assistant Director for Manufactured Housing and MMCRC Manager.
Great. And Stephen? Okay, maybe not connected there. We'll find out. Ken?
Sure, I'm Ken Pryor. I'm the program coordinator for MMCRC.
And Alexandria?
Hi, I'm Alexandra Ring. I am our government relations coordinator for our homeownership division. And also, just since Stephen's not connected, Stephen is our lovely research analyst for homeownership.
Great. And James?
Good morning, I'm James Klosnick. I'm a communications coordinator supporting the homeownership division.
Great. And we have two guests in that. And well, actually one guest. I'm sorry, I skipped one of our members. She's looking at me, paused. I'm going to have you. I have to make fun of myself now.
I'm Heather. I'm with Neighbor to Neighbor Mediation, run centers in Marion County, Lynn County, and Benton counties. She, her pronouns.
Great. And from Common Ground, I have Sue, and I'm not sure that's.
Well, I'm Brian Stevens. I'm the program coordinator for Common Grounds Mediation in Coos County. And we also do Douglas County. Sue will be on a little bit later. She's going to try to get on.
Great. Welcome. And with that, we have the review and comments from minutes from the December meeting.
Hey, Brian, we got Shauna. I don't know if Shauna introduced herself or not, from our OACS.
It's okay. I'm a program analyst with MMCRC. Hi.
Sorry about that. Thanks for catching that, Rick. And review of the minutes, and I was not there, so for those who were.
Brian, I don't remember getting minutes of the December meeting.
You got, I think, sent out with the packet. It came out, I think, a couple days ago, and Judy may have a better time, and it's easy for you to just do a quick resend to John.
I didn't see it with the agenda, but so maybe
Okay.
I missed it, but I don't have it.
Yeah. So I just asked her to resend it to you, so.
I'll send it
Yeah.
right now.
And it looks, as far as members, it was Tara and Angela, who's not here, and Heather and John. And I realize, John, you haven't received them yet, so as you're getting them, the good news is they're pretty concise. The only question I had is, I noticed under the legislative update, it was listed as a legislative concept 560. Is that still in the you're muted, Alexandra, sorry.
That's still correct.
Okay.
Well, I don't want to make people wait while I wait for
Okay.
the email or while I try to read them. So
Okay,
if there are other people who read them and are okay with them, then go ahead.
so
Actually, John, I'm just reading him as well.
the good news is we have a short agenda, so we can take a moment, and we can also circle back around to approving the minutes.
Okay, I just got them. But why don't you go ahead with the rest of the meeting?
Okay. And don't know, Alexandria, what your timing and availability is for today, if you want to do a legislative update, being that I'm guessing you're a little busy these days. to start
I
off.
am currently sitting in our Portland office or our Salem office, but I am gonna hop over to the Capitol here in a few minutes.
Okay,
So I'll just give kind of a brief update. So LC 560, we are still, we have not dropped that bill yet. So it does not have a bill number. We are waiting in the governor's office on that one, but the provisions of 560 extending the dispute resolution advisory committee and associated grant making authority are in a bill that Representative Marsh has as well. That would be HB 3151. OHCS does not have official permission to support that bill, but that is one of the provisions in there, as well as a number of other things related to manufactured housing, kind of clarifying landlord and tenant responsibility for site improvements. I think they're amending it, so it will. What is in it is going to change, but I know both DRAC and the landlord tenant site improvement clarification are remaining. I think for me, that's really it. We've got a number of manufactured home bills kind of moving around, including a lot of funding. But I think John may be best in the best place to speak to that.
great.
So the Marsh bill that Alexandra just mentioned, and I didn't even know the number yet. I've been focused on other bills.
It's not first read until Thursday. So technically it's not introduced, but it does have a bill number.
Good, thank you. And Marcia's been really busy. And I haven't been able to contact her for a couple of weeks. That 3151, if that's the correct number, and I hope it is, that besides extending the sunset on the DRAC would also expand the allowed activities of the Senate Bill 586 from 2019 attorney position. I had a disagreement with the DOJ lawyers to HCS about what those activities were. Not to belabor the point, but this bill would allow the lawyer to do more than just sue landlords, which was not the goal. And it was certainly not something the landlords would have supported. Anyway, that Alexandra's correct that Marsh has a couple of bills. The main thing she's trying to do is get more money for park development, park preservation. That's going to be a reach. I have not had a chance to look at the governor's budget. I have no idea whether it includes money for that. Keep in mind that the governor's budget is really a starting point. It indicates what she wants. She's not the decision maker. The decision maker is the legislature. So it's going to be a long way before we have any idea of how much money is available for park purchase, park preservation. The two bills that I've been working on are just general tenant bills. One of them is 799, which had its first hearing Monday. Senator Jama has created a work group, try to negotiate some agreement between the landlords and the tenants. That work group is meeting today at noon. So what 799 does, it does a bunch of things, but the main focus is on eviction procedure. So FEDs, those are evictions, the timelines, how long for a non-payment of rent notice, how long between the filing of an FED and the first appearance and then for trial, whether a tenant can pay the rent at the last minute, say prior to judgment, and avoid judgment. And a couple of other things, but that's going to be negotiated, I believe. Well, we'll see. We'll see whether the two sides can agree on anything. But I think that's what Senator Jama's goal is. The other big bill is Senate Bill 611, which has a House companion bill whose number I don't remember at the moment, but Senate Bill 611 is scheduled for a first hearing on Monday, the 13th in Senator Jama's committee. That bill is aimed at Senate Bill 608 from 2019, which is the rent cap bill. And the issue that's driving that is that the rent cap has passed and now in law is 7% within any 12-month period, 7% plus CPI. Unfortunately, CPI was high as measured over the last 12 months, and the DAS since that, and it's 7.6. So that means the rent cap is 14.6, which is way more than anybody anticipated, and is scaring a lot of people. So there's going to be a lot of discussion about that rent cap in 611. I don't know what else to say. It's too early in the session to have any kind of feel for what's going to go on yet. And as Alexander said, there is a lot of interest in manufactured housing. There's a huge amount of interest in housing, period. You may have seen that on her first day in office, Governor Kotek issued an executive order declaring homelessness and housing to be a top priority emergency. And she's created something she's calling a Housing Production Advisory Council with 24 members, 17 of whom would be citizens of some sort. And presumably one of the things they could discuss would be the use of manufactured housing to meet our housing demand. What she's trying to do is boost our production. We're behind by tens of thousands of units. And it's going to take a while to get out of that hole, but getting out of it needs to start sometime. So I think that's going to be a big focus of the legislature. Often when that comes up, you have a fight between the conservatives who say, well, the problem is land use, and the liberals who say, no, the problem is we don't have enough money. God knows. So that's all I can say.
Great.
Too soon yet.
See, Nancy, you have your hand out, and before that, Alexandria, can you share with those who may not be familiar when the last day for bills to be introduced are? I'm thinking it's like April something, if I.
So the last day to drop a legislative concept, and let me double check on my calendar before I say this, because it is not April.
Oh.
It is, so technically it is February 21st. There are some kind of like committees can drop bills and, you know, finance bills, things like that aren't held to that time, but you know, classic, you know, drafted by legislative council. Here's what we want to do. These are the things we want to change. Those have to be introduced by February 21st.
But keep in mind, and Alexandra's hinting at this, keep in mind that there are ways around that. If it has the support of the speaker or the president of the Senate, there are ways to get a bill done. It's called, one of the ways is called gut and stuff. You find a bill with a relating clause that is close to what you're interested in, and then you gut it and stuff in it what you want. And then the rules committee can do whatever it wants. I know, so there's just.
There are ways around that. There are a lot of bills that just have the relating to clause relating to housing. So you can do a lot with that.
As Yogi Berra said, it's not over till it's over.
Right.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm aware of that, but to help kind of people get the general broad process of the session and piece and that, because like you say, it is early, and that's one of those first markers of when there's a shift. So thanks for that. Nancy.
Okay, so I'm on another committee, and it has.
But you cut off, you just muted.
My silly mouse. Okay, I am also on another state housing committee, which has to do with how manufactured housing replacement and funding. And so I asked Bill Van Vliet is on that committee as well, and he mentioned a bunch of these bills and proposed bills, and I just got an email from him this morning that said things are moving fast this session. Our funding bill is HB 2983 and the policy bill is HB 3151. HB 2983 is actually scheduled for a hearing already tomorrow morning. If you wish to speak on behalf of residents about the benefits of park preservation and new park development, please do. And I can contact him, you know, on how to get on the roster to speak. So anyway, I just wanted to pass that information on to you guys.
So just to note, that bill was developed by a work group led by Bill Van Vliet, for Representative Marsh. A bunch of people were on it, including me. It's a good bill, should pass. It's not a hugely controversial thing.
Yeah, so they said, if you want to speak in behalf, have a listening or whatever they have it, bring tomorrow morning. So anyway, that's it.
Great, well, thank you, and thank you, Alexandria, for your update. And the upside is being in real person session, at least you get all your steps in, if you count steps.
All of the steps. My team may or may not have a competition about it. Thank you all so much. I'm gonna hop off. Have a good day, folks.
Thank you. Bye. And so that's the legislative update. Circle back around to the minutes, even though I realized I had John speaking and he probably wasn't reading and speaking at the same time.
I still haven't read them, so if somebody else read them and is fine with them, it's okay with me.
Heather?
I'll make a motion, I motion that we accept the minutes as published or read or.
Great. Okay, second.
Second.
Great, that was John. All in favor, raise hands or an eye. Seeing everybody's hand raised. Tara is the only one. Oh, there's a thumbs up from Tara, so thank you. They are approved as written. The next piece on the agenda, it kind of ties to the legislative session a little bit, but when we started this committee, one of the big pushes we had asked the housing folks for is to have some data to help guide our discussion and issues. With that, there was a form that was created as well as surveys that were electronic, and just kind of wanted to have it there and to circle back around to know, one, is it being utilized? I will take my responsibility as the senator in Southern Oregon. I know I'm a little behind and haven't gotten things into there complete to date. And was just looking for that piece because one of the key ones is we have no sense of where the cases are coming, what type of cases they are they voluntary, are they mandatory? And the first thing that they used to all be sent in paper, which then created a huge workload for somebody else to transcribe them into an Excel sheet, then try to get data out. So I had asked Rick about that and don't know, Rick, I'm just gonna turn it over to you.
We had a new system come is where we have it from July through last year up to date. We'd like to get everybody to fill in whatever they can, and then we'll definitely put together a report that we can share next meeting. But there are a couple of things I wanted to ask the mediation centers. One was to make sure we get everything updated. While we have a lot of information on mandatory, as far as how many were mandatory, how many were voluntary, and how many were declined, and it's broken down into the different counties. Well, we can provide that, but I want to make sure that we have all the mediation centers reporting in, so that we get a nice clear picture, so that we can all discuss it and see where where we need to maybe focus more, or try to anyway. I mean, it's to see how we can better serve the tenants, number one, and then also make sure that everyone is aware of mediation. For the most part, I think everybody is aware, but it never hurts to continue to let everyone know that it's out there. While I'm talking, I'll just also share the other thing I wanted to share was now that we have our legal aid attorney in place with Oregon Law Center is the way our statutes are set up is that because there's a lot of information, private information and personal information that we're not privy to, we're kind of stuck between the double-edged sword of we can't reach out because, while we can collect this information, we can't utilize it to go reach out to someone because it is private information. So we need permission from tenants who would like to, for example, of having a mediation, and they would like to talk to someone at legal aid, to talk about whether or not it's something they can move forward on. We'd like to ask the mediation centers that after their mediation is complete, if they would, if their client would be interested in being referred to, in this case, Ken, to see about getting on getting in the queue, for lack of a better term, to speak to legal aid about their situation. And again, it's because we can't reach out without permission by through virtue of the mediators already having that relationship can ask, hey, are you interested in being referred to the legal aid center? If they say yes, then it can just go ahead, and then we have that permission to go ahead and talk with them about information. And so that's one thing I wanted to at least ask, and then find out is from the centers that are here, is there any concern that you may have in doing that?
Could speak first in that. One is, I think those people need to get that legal advice prior to mediation, because in other words, they're gonna be potentially mediating away their legal rights and remedies, and if they enter into an agreement, the ship's already kind of sailed, and would help them be in a much more equitable and powerful place of understanding what their rights and laws are, and because so much of civil law is based on case law, that being informed to say, oh, no, it's really not the way you're reading it. Here's what the statute really means and what really happens. So they negotiate from a informed place. Afterwards, it's done and over with. They've met their requirement irregardless of, and that, so I would strongly say it would need to happen before, not after.
Yeah, so then again, it comes back to our cart before the horse, or chicken, whatever you want to call it, is addressing that particular, and maybe John can maybe lend a hand in this, as being an attorney, is what options then, because we're, the reports we get are after the fact. So clearly then a mediation report isn't going to help us any. So I guess my question is, if that's where it needs to start prior to mediation, then maybe with this group, we can figure out, or come up with an idea of how then, other than, sounds like it's just some kind of, I guess, short of a press release, is just letting people know that this, maybe via OSTA, that this service is now available. And I know they have something on their website already on that, but John, any thoughts on that? How do we cross that bridge?
So I see a hand raised, but so maybe the CDRCs could talk about whether they feel like they need to refer someone who contacts them to a lawyer first. Rick, what you're talking about is how a resident with an issue gets to Samantha Sheehan in my office, the lawyer that's funded by Senate Bill 586.
Correct.
And we had a conversation, I think, I can't even remember anymore, but I think it was either last Friday or the Friday before.
Right.
The process for that. And we don't want all 70,000 manufactured home park residents calling Samantha
Exactly.
every day. That's not going to work. And also it doesn't allow HCS to track what's going on. So the process that we talked about was if a tenant contacts HCS or contacts MCRC or contacts OSTA, that we would want the contact to go through CDRC, and then Ken or his staff can refer cases to Samantha with a little bit of background and make sure that it's appropriate for Samantha, and then Samantha will decide whether it's a case that she can help with or not. So I'm not clear about how the CDRCs fit into that process. I don't think we talked about that with Rick.
No, because we didn't have a representative for CDRCs, and then Ken would be Ken is the staff, so he would be the one controlling the referrals.
If I can clarify what we're charged with and what statute refers to is notification of MMCRC should there be a failure to participate or schedule. At that point in time, no mediation has really occurred. And we need to know that people have refused to meet or whatever. And that's what we're kind of looking for, is that information. Much of it is contained in intake and can be grafted onto another, digital worksheet or whatever. But there's really no way of MCRC understanding that people have failed to cooperate. And at that point, then they do have legal options. And we are charged with, recording that. And right now, there's no real specific vehicle to do that. And what we're suggesting is that, again, we can create a form digital form that will graft the existing intake information of basically all the participants and put it into a format that information is there, and the mediator or the CDRC or the executive director signs off on it and sends it to us so that we notify both participants that there is a perception that the attempt to mediate didn't meet compliance, and we send a letter to both parties. So there's that missing bit of information that comes, after intake, and failure to connect and schedule or participate.
And
That's missing.
Heather, and then I have a.
I have grave concern about making referrals based on what we've gathered in intake for confidentiality purposes, and just the we tell them when we pick up the phone, then that starts their confidentiality. And so for certain, if I mean, there are times when I would love to say, John, here's somebody that needs help, and but that's not the nature of mediation, and we simply lose the trust of landlords as well. And sometimes it's landlords that need representation. It's both. And so our neutrality gets compromised as the mediation center if we're making referrals based on information we gather in intake. That's when we see confidentiality begin, right at the intake process.
If I can inject, Heather, we're not talking about passing along the content of mediation. Really, all we're talking about is the failure for mediation to occur.
And
whatever information that is, that's what we're asking for. That's what we're statutorily required to record.
And Ken, I guess I'm a little confused, because that was that whole purpose of that Qualtrics report that we complete at the end of the mediation. And it says, there's specific question in there. Did the mediation occur? Did someone not show up? Were we not able to get a hold of them, close it? And if there's an issue, you're not getting those in a timely manner. That's something we can definitely share. And
well, I mean, that is part of the issue, but typically when these things occur, a mediation hasn't occurred.
Right, and which is when so finishing my thought is, that's when we complete and conclude and close the case as unable to schedule and mark that on that report form.
So let me back up here. I think we're jumping the cart, or putting the horse before the cart before the horse, or whatever the damn thing is. The process that Samantha and I discussed with Ken and Rick has to do with a tenant contacting MMCRC and saying, I've got an issue, what can I do? And the process that we described was Ken or MMCRC would ask the tenant, do you want legal representation? Do you want us to refer you to Samantha Sheehan? So the client would give permission to do that. As you all know better than anybody else, the tenant has to choose mediation for you to get that referral. Or, I mean, I'm sure that some of the mediation cases come from landlords, but probably not very many. And MMCRC, the Samantha Sheehan is not serving landlords. She's only serving tenants. So landlords can't be referred to Samantha to represent. So if a tenant contacts MMCRC and says, I want a lawyer, I got this huge issue, Ken is supposed to say to them, well, do you want us to share your information? And then the second thing that would go to Samantha would be contact information for Samantha to contact the tenant, and then sort of a brief statement of what the issue is, not any great detail. If the CDRCs are in a position where you think the tenant is asking you for legal representation or wants a lawyer, not mediation, then you could use the same process, but you don't have to. You don't have to. I agree with what Brian said earlier, that it would be better for a tenant to have legal advice before a mediation so that the tenant knows what his or her rights are. But a lot of what the CDRCs do is try to make sure that one side doesn't take advantage of the other side. They're not lawyers, they're not giving legal advice, but they want to make sure it's an even discussion or fair discussion. So I don't think we have a process for what CDRCs should do if they want to refer a tenant to Samantha. I think that's up to you guys. If you think in your minds that you want to pull back and stop the mediation, then I think what you would have to do would be to go to Ken or tell the tenant to go to Ken, and then Ken could refer the tenant to Samantha.
Yeah, I think that's where I was. I think we're circling back to my original question, is, and I think, and then John, I think landed on it, is it really, unfortunately, that because we don't have permission to reach out, coming back to the same question of, is we're seeking referrals. And I think it's more on what is the comfort level of then each mediation center in, in the screening call, whether or not they need to maybe prior to mediation is referring it over to Ken for screening again. And again, it's totally up to you. The other thing is Ken was concerned with is the mandatory mediation that landlords declined to be at. The report will show which county this happened in, and which, and Stephen is going to enter a tab where all the mandatory mediations that were declined. So we'll have that information, but that's all it shows. It's not going to give us contact information, people's names. It's just the information. And I guess that's maybe where I didn't allude to, is that while he can get it because it comes in through Qualtrics, we're not allowed to see it. And that's why, because we don't have permission at that point to look at that, we can only see what the resolution was, whether it was resolved, was it mediation declined, whether voluntary, mandatory. We're just getting general information. And so we can't reach any farther than that without permission. And so, and again, I think everyone's kind of touching the same thing in a sense of the tenants that we get that are being referred, that's already happening. It's these that we're missing that we're trying to address, and how do we get there? I mean, I'm just one brain cell, and if I learn something new, I forget how to tie my shoes. So it's one of those things of how, as a group, then can we figure out how best that we can get these some of these tenants that may not, in your opinion, may not need mediation, but really should talk to an attorney. And whether, do you have a comfort level? I guess that's the question. Do you have a comfort level in referring over, like John had mentioned? And I guess it's each individual CDRC. I'm sorry, Brian.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, as a blanket, we encourage all parties to seek legal advice and get their questions or concerns answered, but it's generic. And we're more than happy to say, yes, okay, and another resource to possibly get that is through, if you're a manufacturer, another resource might be MMCR. I mean, what we truly like doing is saying, suggest you contact 211 or the Oregon Bar referral number piece, and usually don't go farther because we provide that to both parties. So I would feel a little uncomfortable saying, oh, I'm sorry, you're the landlord, you can't call this place, but oh, tenant, you can. That wouldn't work, but happy general information that goes to everybody to say, here's how it is. But it sounds like, yes, you're the sifter and sorter. And there's also, I think, on the bottom of the letter they receive on the mandatory that's declined, it also says, here's how to get legal advice.
And that one's gonna have to be extracted, so.
I think someone
Yeah.
is on or is not on
Yeah.
mute.
It didn't.
Well, I guess if I can interject, when people call, you know, we try to keep them from going to court. I mean, the first thing we do is see if, you know, it qualifies for mediation and make people aware of that. But they do have options should a party fail to participate or not schedule. And we have no way of knowing that occurs until we get some sort of notice from, you know, from CDRCs. Now, in the past, it wasn't so much of an issue, and invoices were sent in with that information manually. And now and now you're on a different kind of a cycle. There is no particular billing cycle, apparently. Some parties can do it bi-monthly or every quarter or whatever. But if a person needs to understand or have the availability to connect with an attorney, they need it now, not at the billing cycle.
So if
And
there was a policy, yeah,
delay.
if there was a policy or practice that we as centers completed that report within X amount of time when the case is concluded, that would resolve the issue because we input that information and you get all that. And so it's more, it sounds like more of a policy one that we need to say, oh, the case, you have to complete this report as soon as policy practical, no longer than some amount of business days or something. And just send that out to us as a practice, which is
whatever, but the particulars of the information that we want are the, you know, like the address. We're not asking for any kind of confidential information.
and we enter the addresses of the parties in Qualtrics. We're already entering that.
Well, let's just say that some of it's not really getting sent, and the other part of it is its timeliness. Because those are rights that people have when those particular things fail. I mean, even if they meet and have a mediation and fail to agree, the mediation has occurred, they still have options to go to court with their complaint. And we have to know then. That's all we're talking about, is adding a few additional bits of information. That's, you know, and expeditiously sending it out so we can start the process of notifying them what their options are.
And I see John and Nancy, and not sure who had their hand up, and Rick, so I don't know. And you're on mute, John, sorry.
I think the order is Nancy, me, and then Rick.
Okay. Nancy? You're on.
Yeah, my mouse does not like me. I want to back up on the thing that John mentioned about maybe it would be nice to have advice from an attorney before they go into mediation so that they know what they're, you know, mediating about. My question is so a party sends the information to legal aid, and Samantha's supposed to field all these advice questions. Doesn't that, I mean, is this all for free because she'd be taking a lot of phone calls and advising people, or does this come out of that fund, or how's that work?
So Samantha is paid through the special assessment that tenants pay every year with their property taxes. It's also what pays for MMCRC. And it's capped at $100,000 a year. It's part of the sunset issue because we started late with the program for Samantha, but she gets paid. 100,000 doesn't cover everything. Oregon Law Center pays the rest of what is required to compensate Samantha and make her a lawyer, or make her available to work as a lawyer. But the idea of going through MMCRC to get to Samantha is to make sure that she doesn't get overwhelmed with 70,000 phone calls. I mean, I said this earlier, there are two purposes. One is to allow HCS to track what's going on with this, and the other is to make sure that we don't overwhelm Samantha. She's going to do that herself. She has a supervisor here. It's not me. It's the lawyer who is the manager of this particular Lane County office, who's very, very capable. And they're going to decide, once they get referrals from Ken Shop, they're going to decide whether this is something that would be appropriate for her, whether she can handle it, how she would go about it, so forth. So at that point, it's going to become a lawyer-client privilege relationship in which Samantha represents the tenant. Anyway, so there's that. Does that answer your question, Nancy? Okay. All right. So here's my question. I'm guessing that most of the tenant contacts with the CDRCs comes from MMCRC. Is that correct? No? Tenants contact
Not
you all,
necessarily, no.
tenants contact you all CDRCs directly?
They can.
I know they can, but do they? I mean,
Yeah,
so Brian,
yes.
how,
Yes.
what percentage are referrals from MMCRC versus direct contact to you?
Direct contact is probably 80%.
Wow.
And further, that's what the literature and the websites and all the material says in that flow chart we created. It says if you have a dispute, contact your CDRC.
Well, and plus Tara pointed out that you all also get a fair number of direct contacts from landlords. So and in those cases, the tenant's not going to go to MMCRC first. The tenant's going to hear from the CDRC setting up the mediation, or the landlord setting up the mediation. So I don't know what to say about those direct contacts by landlords or tenants to the CDRCs. They may not end up knowing about Samantha. And there's nothing I think we can do to fix that or change that.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm more than happy to say, if you have questions, one of the possible resources is MMCR, and here's their 1-800 number. I mean, we do that regularly now anyways, as part of our process.
And Ken, are there landlords who contact you for information?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so Ken could say to either a landlord or a tenant, that's a legal question. I'm not a lawyer, I can't answer it, but landlord, you can contact MHCL, the landlord organization, because they have access to lawyers and they have a lot of materials. And tenant, if you have a legal issue, let me know that and we can discuss whether you want a legal referral.
Which actually full circle back to why you're trying to get that legislative change piece to include education as part of the grant and funding, because I think that is one of the whole keys. And one of the goals was to have good, concise, current legal information available for parties, for everybody to self-educate.
No, that's correct. I want Samantha to go to parks and meet with the residents and talk about what the law, what the law is, how it works, so forth, and if they lead legal representation, to consider Samantha or a referral to Samantha. I'll note that that's what OSTA used to do when OSTA was led by Pat Schwach. Pat Schwach, as the president of OSTA, she was a park resident. She went to parks individually and would set up meetings, and she would do exactly that. OSTA doesn't have the capacity to do that anymore. Pat Schwach is dead. And so we need to find another way to educate tenants.
Well, that's why we have our tenant training that Ken is putting on. At least we're going to kick that up to at least 3 or 4 times a year, where we'll have I'd like to have Samantha come out, and one of the meetings be just that, talk about how to best utilize OLC. But let me ask you this, or maybe anyone can answer that. And Stephen's on the, Stephen actually controls the reports. And in speaking with Stephen yesterday, he said that we do get the names and address information on each tenant when they send in a report. my question is, by virtue of the tenant sending in a report, is that in itself, and maybe John could answer this, or maybe Brian, I'm not sure who, in itself, does that give us permission to contact them? I guess this is what I'm trying to get to is, how do we contact these people if they didn't reach out to us and say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about legal aid? If they fill out the Qualtrics information, by virtue, is that giving us permission to contact them?
Well, there's two components. The one that has the address and all that is the mediator report, which we fill out. I mean, a simple one for us to add, and you can put it on the survey, is the question that says, I would like to be contacted by MMCR to follow up.
Oh, that's perfect.
And
Stephen, can we get that?
So just to throw in
Yeah.
on that, getting people to complete a survey is very difficult.
Right,
So
no, I understand that part.
But even on the report, we could add just one field that says, this tenant would like to be contacted by MMCR, and it can be about anything. It could be about mediation services. It can be about, they're really unhappy with me as their mediator to whatever. But we regularly have that on our surveys. Would you like to
Okay.
be contacted? And
Stephen, is that an easy thing to do or difficult or?
No, it's relatively easy. And from what I see on my side, with the mandatory mediations that are declined, from what I'm seeing is that most of them is scheduling issues. So of course, I don't know the full scope of what happens on the center side. I'm not seeing if they're being referred to Samantha or anybody or any legal aid.
right, which
So
we don't,
what-
I think that's the piece. We don't make any referral to a legal piece to say, oh, gee, you want to follow up with that. I mean, they could stick that in the letter they received from your office, MMCR, that says, hey, we weren't able to pay, we concluded it. And it was a drafted form letter that covered the pieces and was
Okay.
written as legal information, and it says, if you have questions, follow up with an attorney, and you can say, or if you have, other questions, call us, and I think that's actually what that letter says. And there was a lot of energy and time put into drafting that letter, so it was gonna have the success set.
Yeah, okay.
I got a quick question. When the grantee reports are being done, when the surveys are being done, are they being done after the fact, or are they being done with the client themselves at that time?
So two ways. One, if it's a process where, such as, it's not a mandatory, but it's a court case, they fill them out in court. I come back to the office, enter it, which is why at the bottom of that survey, there's a spot that says, oh, was this done by a staff person? The
Okay.
other way we do it is send them a link to say, hey, would you complete this survey at the end of the process?
So
and we have a survey.
oh, go ahead, sorry.
So when we're doing remote mediation, we collect it with some of our other stuff that isn't on that survey. So it goes out as a Google form, and then our staff person enters it into the Qualtrics. And that, again, the staff is entering it on behalf of the party.
Okay. All right. Because if it was done, I know the client surveys are done after the fact, but if the grantee reports were actually done with the client themselves, on that question where we ask, hey, if mediation was declined, we could just put a short blurb that say, hey, if mediation service are declined, you have these options. And one of the options is legal aid from Samantha or whoever that helps with that. That could be a simple remedy, but of course there's a lot of, I guess, red tape in just doing that. But
And where I'd encourage that is something on the letter that they receive, because theoretically, every case that's closed, that was the one what we wanted to do was create a document that a tenant or someone could use in a legal process to be able to say, I tried this, my property manager or on-site did not comply because it is a potential legal defense to an eviction action. So that's why that whole letter got generated to begin with, and it comes from your guys' office versus the center, just so it's clear and it's consistent.
Right.
And Carla, I think, has a question.
So I know that Heather was saying it's really hard. When Stephen was asking the question, Heather was saying it's really hard to get them to fill out the survey. So that's what when Stephen was kind of asking the same question, isn't there a way like that when you're meeting with them to have on the form that you guys fill out to ask them after this is all over, would you like to be able to speak to an MMCRC representative after this is all over? And then you guys just click a box, would like to speak to MMCRC. So when it gets submitted, and then we can reach out or something like that. Then so that's on your form when you ask them that, instead of having have it be on the form that they fill out, since it's hard to fill it out.
Yeah, and actually, it doesn't have to be specific for legal aid,
Yeah.
but just that they want to speak with us so that then we can have Ken contact them. I'm just looking for the permission part. That's all I'm looking for.
Exactly. It would be a quick question. You guys could click that box and then we could it would be something that we could do on program side.
And that would be helpful for us because then we're consistent and it's going to both sides and not a tenant or either one could do that and you'd be able to reach out to them.
Yeah, that's actually a great solution, which we can put as a checkbox, to contact MMCRC. Would you like to? And then we could take the initiative then to suggest the Legal Aid Center, and that would allow us to then control stuff coming in from the CDRCs, which will then take that onus off of you guys to say, hey, I'm not referring legal services, I'm just referring MMCRC. And I think that might be, so Ken, I think that might be our answer to our predicament of permission.
I've had a bad connection, but I guess one of the issues that I've experienced already is that the players change, because typically when someone declines, it's not the park manager's decision. That comes higher up. And that is the person that we need to be able to direct information to. If information doesn't change, yeah, everything is there. But that's not been my experience thus far. It's that change of names and authority that decline. You won't get a park manager doing that. Usually that comes from, much higher above. I mean, it's a simple thing.
Right, and those are whoever we spoke with at the center declines, that's whose information you're going to get. And if that's where I would make the assumption, when you send that letter out, it goes out to all the contacts. And
absolutely.
Carla?
Can I say something? Yeah. So I know that we're talking about those Exhibit E's and Exhibit D's. And I know back in the day when you guys would submit your everything was paper and we submitted the invoices and you had to submit those mediation papers. I just want to reiterate, because right now, when you submit your invoices and you send them and they're all PDF, we don't know for sure. And I'm saying it out loud, that reiterate, it's really important that we do get those Exhibit E's and Exhibit D's, because we don't know for sure if those invoices, because that's really, because that's part of being paid, is that's out of good faith that you guys are submitting those and for mediation. So that, I'm gonna say it, I guess I'm gonna say it for the 50K and the invoices, because that's how we know for sure that makes, I'm not saying that's not happening. I'm just saying, just a reminder to submit those when you submit your invoices to Judy and myself. Am I correct?
No, and with that, what I've always interpreted as, I'm attesting that our agency has complied with that and done that is what I'm signing on that line for.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just a reminder to submit them. I know,
which is where the whole conversation started, and saying, let's see a report, and so then we can send that back out to say, oh, look, Resolve, you're saying you've done 40 cases. We only have 10 reports right now. What's up? Anything else on this? It sounds like the recommendation is to add that to the to the mediator report that someone would like to be contacted, as well as the surveys to help resolve that permission issue. And then, like I said, at the next meeting, hopefully we can have that sense of what's generated, and would also be happen Rick and Steven to set up a time offline to talk more, because that's what I'm trying to get for the group, as well as the legislation is interested in. Oh, how many cases are you doing? How many?
Yeah.
And it's been always a bit of a mystery of having a piece of data that's we can stand behind and feel is reliable.
Well, we have it now, like I said, and if we can get everybody's up to
Yeah.
date. And again, it is this new program was as of July, I think. So but we'll get the dates out to you guys, but at least we'll have it. And from then on, we'll be able to at least provide that, but I'll get that to you, Brian.
Great.
So really quick, Stephen, if you're adding this button to that form, it doesn't change the link that they have, correct? The link is still gonna be good, right?
Yes, I'm pretty sure. I can't say 100%, but I'm pretty sure that it should be good. No,
Okay.
should be the same link.
Okay.
Just
If
amend.
it changes, you'll let us know and we can send the link out to them again, correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Just following through. Thank you.
Oh, hey, you know what? Since I'm here, is it also possible for me to, I guess, tweak certain things? I know since we're just adding this one button, is it also possible for me to just tweak some of the questions in the survey? I know it would be wise for us to have a group to just go over the survey design, but since I'm doing this one edition, could I do other stuff?
So to back up, your predecessor, there was a work group, and then there was some input put back from the CERCs, how to clean it up and what changes we wanted and caught. I don't know if that made it through the transition to you. If not, would like to probably schedule with some of the CDRCs and yourselves just to say, hey, corrections, because I mean, there were some simple name errors and drop downs and some other pieces, and I can dig through my stuff as well to see if I can.
Brian, that'd be a great idea. Let's do that, and we'll get it scheduled.
Okay.
Sound good? Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And with that, the last item was the 2023 schedule. With our shorter number of items, and we're getting closer to wrapping up within an hour, what personally I was going to put out there to get a temperature on is have the April meeting and then possibly drop it to a quarterly meeting versus every 2 months.
Okay with me.
And like I said, we'd like to make that, to have it reflected in the minutes, and that we'll make the official decision at the April meeting. That way, those who are not present will have a chance to weigh in on that. But the proposal will be to decide, and plus that it aligns with the quarters is the other logistics reason of why I want to do the April meeting.
It sounds like a good idea, Brian.
Great.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yes.
Good or
Yes.
yes?
While you all were debating the forms, since I'm not involved in that, I did read the minutes, and there are two errors that I would like to ask to be corrected, and they're just errors, they're not subjective stuff. On the bottom of the first page, under the legislature update, the last line of that, or the next to last line before Alexandra says currently there are no updates. The last line says under Senate Bill 5886, there's an extra 8 there. So that should say under Senate Bill 586, not 5886. Okay, and then continuing on that same line, it says are supported by Representative Marsh under her bill, Senate Bill 608. just delete that paren. That's not her bill. Senate Bill 608 is a 2019 bill that created the rent cap and good cause only. So just delete that paren. And then with those two corrections, I think the minutes are good. And then the second thing I want to bring up is that I've raised this a couple of times. I would like to see an accounting of the special assessment fee, how much money has been coming in and how much money, how it's being used. Rick hinted at a recent meeting that it's not enough. And if it's not enough, then I think we need to figure out a way to get enough to continue the stuff that we're doing, to continue MMCRC and to continue paying Samantha, who just started. And probably I wouldn't count on getting money from general fund during the next couple of years. But I do think it would be possible to increase the special assessment, but that would require a statutory change. It's probably too late to do it in 2023, although if we're in an emergency situation, maybe. So I don't know, Rick, whether it's possible to get that kind of accounting.
I actually, glad you brought that up. I did run it up and we cannot share accounting with that. I can give you what the balance is and that's it. And the only other thing that they did bring up was this is still a pilot program. And so raising and the fees that are being charged, some of the fees are used for that. But the problem is that it only covers low income tenants. And so others that are paying taxes, it's an assessment on value of the home, not an assessment for these services. And so may get some pushback on that on a pilot program. So I think it would need to be, and I'm just throwing it out there that somebody may view it as, or some may view it as, well, this is a pilot program. Why are we raising prices on a pilot program that's not permanent? So I think it would need to be made permanent, and then at the same time make it a raise the fee. But that's just this is what was brought up, and so I wanted to share that. But it's hard to figure. There's not a lot I could share as far as the actual details of everything, other than I think the last time we spoke, John, I said that we had about $500,000, a little under $500,000 left, but we're starting to collect again. But again, it's all a process of. So, and that was, I think in December, I mentioned that, and that carries us through June. But those are the two things that I wanted to share on that. I don't know if that helps you or not, John.
Well, I'm disappointed to hear you say that you all have concluded you can't share the information I'm asking for, because I've seen that in the past.
Yeah, I really can't answer the past. I can only share what I got so far, and that was with this was with the accounting department and the managers, and so as I said, we discussed it internally.
I'm noting my disappointment, and this is a fee that the tenants imposed on themselves for the very purpose of creating and running an MCRC. And and I'm speaking on behalf of the tenants, I'm on the OSTA board. I've written all these statutes, and if we can't see how the fee is working, that kind of frustrates the point of having a fee that the tenants have voluntarily agreed to pay in statute and use it. But so I'll note the disappointment and go on from there. If you think you need more money, Rick, to run MMCRC, then we need to know that. You can't see HCS can't do a bill, or you could ask DAS, but you're going to need proponents, and those proponents are going to come through me. So we need to coordinate and do something about this so we don't lose MMCRC. I'm not
again. I understand. I totally understand. Until we actually see what the accounting is with the manufactured homes as well as marinas, we won't know where we're going to sit on that particular amounts. But as soon as we do, we'll definitely discuss that and circle back around.
Do you have any sense of when you'll get that? People pay that with their property taxes.
Working it on now.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to keep asking that question because I don't want to miss the opportunity. If we figure out there's a problem after the money's all gone, then it's going to be much harder to get an increase.
Agreed.
And I think one of the other ones I could speak from a personal case that we had is there's also confusion and clarity at what levels that money is collected and funnels in. There was a community that was deemed not to need to register, and there were some residents who were a bit frustrated because they had been assessed by their county that fee for numerous years, and to learn they actually couldn't have services. So I think that one of getting a sense of clarity on that funding is probably outside the scope of this committee, but I think there is some relevance and overlap, and I think that's been a longstanding frustration and concern for folks, being that there may be a lot of folks who get assessed that and can't get services, and that may need to be a statutory change as well as the informal one in the past. People who challenged it were provided services.
So I mean, I can answer that right now, Brian.
Okay.
Every manufactured home park in the state, and now every marina in the state, is eligible for MMCRC, and they pay the $10 special assessment. There are a couple of counties that have exempted low-value manufactured homes. I don't think that statute has been amended to include floating homes and marinas, but it may be that there aren't that many well, there probably are some low-value floating homes, but that figure of low value is indexed. It's roughly around 20,000, 25,000. So those counties have concluded, and that would be the Tri-County area around Portland and Lane have done this. And those low value homes are exempted from paying the special assessment. And that was a bill, that was Val Hoyle's very first bill as a legislator. And she is now, of course, a congressperson. That tells you how long ago that deal was cut. But there shouldn't be any parks as a whole park that are exempted from either paying the special assessment or qualifying for MMCRC.
Yeah, no, there were some other ones, and like I said, I'm happy to chat offline on that. With that, anything else for the good of the order? If not, we can conclude our meeting for today. Hearing none, thank you, everybody. Have a great
Thank you.
time, and we will see everybody in April.